I'm Rashid Al-Hawli. I'm the founder of Muslims in Tech. And just a little bit of a background about who we are. So essentially, we were born out of COVID. I always had the idea of starting a group or a collaborative or a network of Muslims in tech so that we have a common identity. As you probably have noticed from the setup here, there aren't any alcoholic drinks, and that's by design. So we used to get invited to a lot of events, especially in the tech sector, in any sector really, networking events, and they always involve alcohol. It's not something many Muslims are very comfortable with, so that was one of the main motivations behind starting Muslims in Tech, having a safe space for Muslims to feel like they belong, feel like they have a common identity, and they can network along with each other without feeling bad about it. So other than that, we have a supportive network. We're over 720 people now. We network, mentor, help each other out, employ each other, and ideally, and I've seen it happen to a certain extent, build businesses together. And the ethos of UNSW founders, I think it's pretty fitting that we have a few startup founders here that are coming to learn from one of our members, Mr. Qureshi. I'll give him his due introduction soon. But yeah, I just wanted to first take the opportunity to thank Nina and UNSW founders. I mean, when they heard about the opportunity, they were very gracious at inviting us and working with us to present this. And I think it's we owe it to them. We give them a round of applause for being so gracious about it. All right, on to the main event. So Harris is perfect for UNSW founders, perfect for Muslims in tech, and he's the ideal blend. So he's the current VP of Sales and Customer Success at Hatch, also a startup. A new employment marketplace changing how people find work. That's a great fit for them by matching them to jobs based on their holistic fit. He's also the author of This Week in Australian Startups. You've probably seen it around on LinkedIn, very popular newsletter. Curated wrap-up and analysis of everything you need to know in the Australian startup and tech ecosystem. He also successfully did this for the London tech ecosystem. I think it was similarly named this week in London startups. Yeah. And Harris has got over a decade international experience working in tech from early stage to big tech in companies like Employment Hero, Hired, which was acquired by the Adecco Group, and AWS, establishing and scaling GTM teams from 0 to 70 million annual recurring revenue. Without further ado, please make Harris feel welcome. Just if you've got any questions, save till the end. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A.
Cool. Thanks for having Rashid and Nina. Great to be here. It's weird to be on the other side at uni. I think I finished uni 10 years ago, usually asleep in a lecture. So hopefully I don't bore anyone today. So yeah, I guess today, like what we're here, I just share some of my experience. As you know, I'm not a founder myself, but I guess just sharing some of my learnings and experience of doing that 0 to 1 journey, how you think about product market fit. So I'll run through a few different frameworks that I think are good ways to sort of structure and think about it, and sort of sprinkle in my experiences of how I've sort of tackled that stage at different companies. So yeah, a bit about me. This is really like my background, B2B, SaaS, marketplaces, HR tech, really in that sales and customer success space. I'm from Adelaide, so I went to uni in Adelaide, which in my opinion is the greatest city in the world. But unfortunately, there's not many jobs, especially in tech, which is sort of where I wanted to work in. So that's what sort of brought me to Sydney. And I was in Sydney for about 5 years, worked at Maestrano, worked at Employment Hero, and then was lucky enough to go live in London for about 5 years with Hired and sort of really scale that business. And then got back a couple of years ago at AWS and sort of, got that big tech tick on my resume, which always helps. And then sort of, jump back into the startup world with Hatch. And then, always really been interested in startups. As I mentioned, when I was in London, similarly also born out of COVID, when everyone had nothing to do, when, if you remember, when Clubhouse was still a thing. That's how we kind of started, this week in London Startups. We just started doing chat rooms, getting like-minded people together, and when Clubhouse started to not be a thing, we were like, what's next? And that kind of spun into a newsletter, and then when I got back here, sort of felt like there was still a gap in the market for something like that, and kind of just, rinse and repeated the same playbook. So yeah, I think like the first thing that I want to talk about is maybe just thinking about like the maturity stages of how you think about sales. In my experience, and I guess the way I think about it, is really these sort of 3 stages. In the beginning, it is very founder-led. As a founder, like you need to be able to sell your product. You're the best salesperson. It's about building that repeatable sales motion, but it's definitely not scalable. Unless you're sort of doing the holy grail of product-led, we don't hire salespeople and sort of everything does itself. But again, that's a very different growth motion where then you need to invest in product and engineering resources, and the product itself needs to do the sales. But I guess, again, my experience is B2B SaaS, typically you do have a sales function. So that's what I'll be focusing on today. So once you're sort of there, then it's really about like, how do you replicate that? How do you scale it? And that's really when you start thinking about like, who is your first sales hire? And the main thing you want to sort of validate at that point is, can we replicate what me as a founder is doing? That's going to be challenging. You could either go on and bring a junior sort of individual contributor. That could be an entry-level SDR. That could be an account executive to sort of like, again, can you repeat that sales motion that the founder is doing? Or you might bring in a senior sales leader who's comfortable sort of getting their hands dirty and doing the nitty-gritty cold calling, whatever it might be. That's the main thing you want to validate at that point, like can we replicate what the founder is doing? From there, then it's really about scaling, and you invest and build your sales team. That obviously needs to align with the growth motion that you're setting your company out to be. Is it product-led growth, product-led sales? Is it a sales and marketing-led company? These are all things that you'll sort of figure out along the way. The first framework that I like to use, there's this guy called Rob at Harvard, and he's sort of come up with this framework, is the 5 different levels of product market fit, which I'll sort of use to sort of structure the rest of today's presentation. So, from level 1 to, I guess, really thinking about this concept of a case study, and that's how you think about like, what is that repeatable sales process? So what is that user journey? What's the value that you're trying to do? So for example, at Hatch, we're an employment marketplace. Our case study is, I'm an employer, I'm a hiring manager, I have an open role I'd like to fill. I can go on Hatch, post it, and I can hire someone really easily. That's the case study. In our context, that might differ based on the type of role, the seniority, the location. So it's really figuring out like, to begin with, you don't have any case study and you definitely can't repeat it. At level 2, you've got a case study, but you're struggling to repeat the delivery of that case study. And as you sort of progress, it's really around like the repeatable motion of replicating that case study, and then really how do you funnel that growth of that individual case study. There are companies with one use case. It might be, hey, we're a B2B SaaS company that automates your SOC 2 compliance. It's just a one use case, and you could build a $100 million company just off of that, or you might have multiple effective case studies or use cases for your product as well. The second framework is really around thinking about like these 3 different stages. I think a lot of what we'll do is, what's our ideal customer? What's our ICP? There's a lot of, I guess, literature and established, videos where it's Y Combinator, whatever, around how to identify your ideal customer profile. But I think a better way to think about it is, in the beginning, you're going to have your early users when you launch your product, and that's just whoever is willing to try. It's not going to be monetized. There's not going to be any case studies. It's really just validating your market opportunity. You're going to be learning a lot from there. At some point, you're going to monetize it. That's sort of your proof. Great, people are willing to pay for something. And it's really important, I guess, finding the balance between research and doing things in real life. You can do all the research you want. What would you like? What should we build? But what people want you to build is generally not what they will pay for. So it's really around figuring out like, what should we build that someone is willing to pay for? That's that sort of proof of first monetization. Then you sort of progress into your early customers. That's where you've identified your case study because someone's willing to pay you for it, for that value exchange. That's where, your product is sort of, still in your sort of alpha, beta stages. It might not be the, V1 of your product. You can be scrappy. Maybe it's, Zapier, Google Docs, whatever it is. It's these no-code tools. It doesn't really matter. The main thing that's important is that customer experience. What is the experience they receive with your product or service? From there, you're able to then progress into your ideal customers. And for most ideal customers, they'll have more sophisticated requirements. It might be, we need security built in, we need more complex user permissions, we need sharing, we need to integrate with our CRM system, whatever it might be. Your early customers are a lot more forgiving, and they don't really care too much about that. That's important, but to land your ideal customers, that stuff is really important, particularly for a lot of B2B SaaS companies. Your early customers are either startups who are also scrappy, but your ideal customer might be a big bank or a 10,000 person company where you could probably provide some really good value, but you're going to need to pass all these requirements, which you're going to need to prioritize where and sort of when you build. So yeah, starting at like level 1, where you don't have a customer case study that's worth replicating. You're in your early users phase. Like, what can you be doing as a founder? So where I sort of experienced this was at Maestrano and at Hatch as well. These are some sort of general tips. I'll try not to just read off slides, but I think the main thing is really like you've just got to network. Like, you are the product. That's it. When I was at Maestrano, I was going to 3 to 4 networking events every single week, whether it was lunch, whether it was in the evening. It's really around like building your brand and your reputation and like letting people in your industry and your community know who you are and how can you add value. If your community doesn't exist, can you create that community? You don't have to become a thought leader. Great, that sort of content is always good, but can you be a connector in your industry? Can you start to curate information? Can you start to be that person within your industry that you're starting to build a bit of a reputation and a brand from yourself? Obviously, generally, like for any company, your early customers are your family, friends. I would also include investors in that. Like, if you've raised some money, if you've got that sort of network, that's going to be your best entry point into getting into early customers, is those referrals. If you've got angel investors in your startup, again, supporters, who can you ask within your network to get you that first meeting with whoever your prospect is? It's going to be really difficult at this stage to just send a cold email to some company who's getting millions of emails. You're going to need a referral to sort of cut through the noise and start from there. In my experience, yes, you can like sponsor events, go to conferences, you can fill out all these applications for awards and things like that, and that stuff is definitely like good for PR and like general visibility, but in my experience at least, it's unlikely to help you grow revenue early on. You're better focusing on sort of that like more one-to-one level activity to getting into the right customers and prospects and growing from there. The key thing you should really be focusing on is like identifying like what should your case study be. Again, for us at Hatch, as an example, we're trying to be a marketplace for every single role across Australia. We want to be global, but early on it was really identifying, great, like what within every single job in the world, where are we actually finding success? So for us early on, we were seeing a lot of success with paid internships and entry-level roles. That was our first sort of case study. Great, we're seeing traction here. That's what we're going to focus on, and definitely down the road, we'd love to be able to help companies hire sales managers, engineering managers, CTO, but this is the first case study that we're seeing success with. Again, yeah, research is good, but I think you can fall into the trap of, great, I'm going to do 100 user interviews, I'm going to speak to all these people. There's definitely value in that, but the best way to learn is just to be out there selling. Propensity to buy, you can ask someone, would you pay for this? And most people, especially if it's family and friends, they're going to be nice and say, yeah, I'll pay for this. It sounds great. When it actually comes to paying an invoice or putting their credit card into your product, things dramatically change. So it's always important to sort of strike that balance, especially if you're investing in building your technology, of like research and sort of what you're actually learning in the real world. At level 2, great, now you've got a customer case study, but you're finding it difficult to replicate it. And that's what your sort of focus is, on how you're going to deliver that case study consistently. Again, do you need to invest in technology? Do you need to hire an engineer? Do you need to build your platform from scratch? Or can you, again, like be scrappy? Can you use a bunch of automation tools and kind of just figure out? The main thing at this stage, and in my experience, isn't about building the perfect platform. It's about delivering that perfect customer experience. They don't care if, there's stories of, booking platforms where, great, you go on their website, great, I want to book a haircut, I'll put it in. And there's so many stories of founders where, that was me. I'd see someone request a form, I would call up the salon and make that appointment for them. So it was more around like validating that customer case study and building it, sort of delivering it repeatedly. I think as a founder at this stage, you want to be close to every single customer, whether like implementation, how they're using your product, what are their pain points. That's really, really important. Definitely you can get help if you need it, whether it's hiring an intern, a customer success manager. But I think, again, in my experience, I wouldn't outsource it or delegate it to someone else. It's fine for that to be a shared responsibility, but at this stage as a founder, you need to be across sort of every single deal, every single customer that you're working with. And again, really aligning like who is your early customer profile as opposed to your ideal customer profile, because there is going to be a difference, and then really sort of doubling down on that. So, for example, at Employment Hero, when I joined, my role was to look after all of our enterprise customers. And that's very different to what the platform is today. At that point, that's what we thought. Our ideal customer is great. We're going to build this platform for every single business. I was working with companies up to 10,000 employees. And what we were learning was, we weren't able to consistently replicate that sort of case study for these large customers. And at the end of it, we align actually what we think our early customer profile is small businesses. And if you look at the Employment Hero platform today, it is very much, I think there's over 300,000 small businesses using that platform today. It's not trying to be an enterprise HR platform, and that was sort of a key learning at that stage, but very easy, great. Enterprise customers, we charge them $8 an employee, 100,000 employees, that's, almost $1 million, awesome, that's how we're gonna grow. But a lot of those learnings at this stage, with the founder being sort of close on what is actually happening, increases your sort of agility to learn. At level 3, great, you're able to replicate this case study, but it's not that sort of hell yes. It's not, you're in front of a customer and like, yep, this is amazing, see the value, let's go. This is where you want to start to invest in your sales system. Not necessarily, it doesn't need to be a sales team. But again, working towards your ideal customer profile, perfecting a sales pitch. How do you explain what your product is? How do you identify the pain points? What is that customer journey? How do you sort of think about your sales funnel and optimize at each stage from, where are my early customers? Where do they live? How do they act? What are their pain points? How do they like to buy? From first meeting to second meeting, is it a demo? Is there a trial? Is there a pilot? How are you optimizing at every single stage and really investing in building that system from taking a prospect through to a customer, all the way through to retaining that customer, whether it's a monthly contract, an annual subscription, whatever it might be. And here is where it's then sort of looking at how can you really grow your pipeline and how do you 10x? How can you sort of really start to open those floodgates now that you've sort of figured out, great, here's the customer that we're going to go after and here's how we add value to them. It's important to probably at this stage, it's not at Amazon, there's this concept of what's a one-way door and what's a two-way door. A one-way door is where you walk through that door and you can't walk back, the door is locked. Maybe you can, but it's very, very difficult. A two-way door is you can walk through and it's very easy to go back. So one-way door decisions, you should always think hard and do more research, but a two-way door, you should definitely have that bias for action. So depending on like where your product is and your growth motion, you'll have a sense of, is this a one-way door or is this a two-way door? If it's a two-way door, just, kind of go with your gut at this stage. And again, are we building something that's product-led? Are we building something that's sales-led? And then, investing in that team. Do you hire an outbound sales rep, or are you gonna, sort of go the Canva Atlassian route and say, we don't like salespeople, we're gonna build a marketing engine, we're gonna build a product engine that's gonna generate leads for us. That's sort of the time to start investing in that sort of infrastructure. At level 4, again, great, everything's awesome. Now it is really about how you're investing in that growth. So you've got your growth motions, you've sort of figured out what they are, and it's really about investing in them. So great, if it's sales-led, you've got your sales structure, you've got an SDR, you've got account executives. It's really about how do you just scale that? That might just be, let's just hire more people. If it's product-led, how do you build out more growth loops? What are the surface areas within your within your product experience where you can activate more users, where you can get other users to invite more people, and sort of really focus on that sort of the virality of your product. Partnerships is always an interesting one. At AWS, that's a huge part of how we used to work, is this partner model. Again, it works very well with the platform. You know, AWS is a platform to build on. There's this entire ecosystem of consulting partners, technology partners. Partnerships, you know, in my experience, work very, very well, but it is a lot of effort to invest into them. If it is just that, great, we've got our partnership strategy, refer someone, we'll give you 10%. You know, if it's a very transactional product, great, maybe it'll work, but in my experience, particularly if you have a B2B product, you really need to invest into making that work. That might mean hiring someone just to manage your partners. How do you work with your partners to help them to generate leads, train them on your product? But it is very you're not necessarily going to see the results of a partnership strategy in 12 months. It is probably more of a sort of 24 to 36 month period. Again, always different product to product, but it can work, but you sort of need to commit to investing into that strategy to really make it work. At level 5, it's just, you know, this ideal state. You sort of at product market fit, and it's just all guns blazing, and it's really just like, how do we really go from here? We're growing a lot. We sort of can't keep up with demand. Obviously, simple things, continue doing what works, continue to optimize your process. You're really starting to build out your best practice playbooks, investing in learning development, how you're onboarding your employees, how do you set up your customers for success. This is also sort of the period where you can start to hunt for new case studies. Great, this is sort of all on that one. How can we increase our sort of TAM, our total addressable market? Maybe with your one case study, you know, the market opportunity is $100 million, awesome, but are there other case studies you can go after? Canva is probably a good example. You know, it started out going after that non-professional designer, you know, small business owners, then they've gone and acquired a professional design platform, and that's a different case study for them. It's great. Now we actually want to serve professional designers. That's a different customer segment. That's a completely different growth motion. The difference is they've acquired a very established business that has already gone through these stages. But there are plenty of companies that are great. Now we've got a new product, a new feature. At Hired, we were also an employment marketplace where we helped companies hire tech talent. And one of the new case studies that we found was, you know, employer branding and doing in-person events like this, where the main interaction between employers and candidates was online through our software, but we saw there was a lot of value in, you know, if we could bring candidates to a company's office, and instead of me talking, it's the CTO talking, it's the hiring manager talking. We were seeing a lot of success with that. And again, we sort of went through level 1 to level 5. Level 1 was, you know, just Google spreadsheets, an Eventbrite link. And then as we sort of matured through that stages, you know, to begin with, it was just sales reps being event marketers, all the way through to, great, let's hire an event marketer just to run this business line. How do we build that functionality into the product where instead of requesting to interview a candidate, you're inviting them to come to your office for an event? So yeah, that's sort of the opportunity thing about that. I guess like the last thing is really like thinking about B2B versus B2C. B2C is not my expertise. I've never worked in B2C, but I think like just some general thoughts. I think B2B is definitely shifting more towards a B2C playbook. You know, previous of how you would do B2B is very much going at the business level. Here's the benefits for your business. Definitely what we're seeing more and more is like that at that individual. So as a B2B platform, you're not necessarily solving the business's problems, but who is the individual in the organization? What are their jobs to be done? And how are you helping them? Particularly like at a, you know, level 1, level 2, if you're working with large companies, you're trying to find that person who's trying to get promoted effectively, who's trying to be able to go to the manager and say, hey, like, look at me, I'm amazing, I brought in this new platform and it's created this efficiency, and you're really trying to identify the individual within an organization that's going to champion your product, as opposed to, great, you can use a tool and here's a list of 100 companies that could use our product. That's not going to get you sales. You need to really, like, who is the individual within that organization and why should they be talking to us, and how do I market to that individual? You can get very targeted on platforms like LinkedIn now. As a founder, I think, we're seeing a lot more what I would say like founder-led growth, where it is really important to invest in your personal brand. I think more so than the company brand early on, because again, like, you are the face of the product, you are the product. Someone can go onto your website, great, maybe there's another company that is a lot more established. Is that gonna get someone across the line? Versus, great, here is this person, I have expertise, I've built a community, I've built my reputation, and they're gonna buy me. And then it's sort of going through the rest of the motions on how do you scale that reputation and get your brand to sort of leverage that. Even on platforms like LinkedIn, the way the algorithms work, content performs much, much better when it's posted from a personal account than a company account. You get about 3 times as much reach if you post from your personal account than your company account. And so again, that's very, very different. Even just thinking of like your company personas, on platforms like TikTok, companies like ClickUp, and like what's the brand persona they built, the videos that they're sort of posting. I don't know how much revenue and leads they're generating off TikTok, but again, it's all just sort of just repetition and building that audience and building that persona. On platforms like LinkedIn, Monzo, which is a sort of a neobank in the UK, the way they sort of interact, and they've built an entire personality around their corporate brand on these professional B2B networks. For B2C, this is like a new company that my wife is starting, which I'm wearing, which you can buy if you're interested. But like the challenge for her and some of the things that I guess I've observed is, for her, what she's really tackling is solving an emotional problem. Her background is she's a corporate lawyer. She's never worked in e-commerce. She's never worked in clothing manufacturing. But the problem that she's trying to solve is, as a third culture person, where do I belong? Do I fit in with the heritage of my parents? But, I was born here, I'm Australian, I kind of don't fit in anywhere. That's sort of the emotional problem that you're trying to solve when you're sort of going as, direct to consumer, when you're sort of solving a B2C problem. Other things she's focused on, sustainable, ethical, it's modest fashion. You're really selling that lifestyle and that brand and bringing people along that sense of community, which isn't always the case in B2B, but is becoming more and more. You see big companies, whether it's Salesforce or HubSpot, great, we've got our user conference, you can get these certifications. They're building this sort of cult following behind their brand and taking a lot of learnings of B2C brands and building that into B2B. Growing up, whether it's, going to school and if you didn't have Nike or Adidas shoes, you might get bullied. Now, if you're working at a tech company and you're not using Canva, you're not using Slack, or if you're using Microsoft Teams, it's like, oh, that's kind of gross. Why are you using Outlook? Why aren't you using Gmail? You're sort of seeing a lot of that similar, I guess, brand ethos from B2C coming into B2B. But I think, the big thing about B2C is like, how do you make people feel connected and belong to your brand and community? And that's becoming more and more important in B2B as well. And definitely, I think, when you're at that early founder-led stage, it is at that individual level, like you are the community. It's not your brand. It's not people who are signed up to your newsletter, but when you go to an event or when you're posting content, are people seeing you as sort of that face of your company and your community? Yeah, that's all I have. These are some of the links, so yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then there's links to the guy from Harvard, his slide deck. I definitely recommend reading that. It's about a sort of 50, 60 page slide deck. He's got some activities in there as well. I think it's a really good way to think about like doing sales, going from 0 to 1, thinking about product market fit, and then the article on early customer profile. Yeah, any questions?
Anyone have any questions? Thank you. With all the hot sort of takes on founder mode by Paul Graham, how does it fit into your thesis where you've kind of emphasized a lot of founder-led sales, obviously the topic today, but in terms of managing delegation, managing your own capabilities, mental health, can you comment a little bit about the sustainability of that and how do you manage the risks?
Again, not a founder, so I can't speak from experience. But definitely, I guess, observation, obviously having worked in a lot of different startups, working with lots of different founders, I think to some extent, like that's a sacrifice that you're kind of making if you want to build something of your own, whether it's a tech company or whether it's just, you're just going to go into consulting and do professional services. You really have to commit to be prepared for that. So I think a lot of it is, do you have the right support structure around you, whether that is at home, with your family, with your partner. It could be, everyone loves a power couple, but, it's difficult if both people at home are trying to be extremely ambitious. Something is going to give, all the way through to sort of your friends, family, community. But yeah, I think, again, it's just once you're sort of seeing that traction, definitely bring help. I think early on as a founder, you have to be the face of the company. That's just my personal opinion. There are definitely companies who've made it work by bringing in an experienced sales leader with lots of domain expertise early on, but then you need to set them up for success and give them a real voice in the company. I think, as a founder, you're not just the chief sales officer, you're also the chief product officer, you're the chief technology officer. You might have someone building the code, but it's your company. You might have co-founders, and you need to sort of really be setting the tone and driving what's happening. But yeah, if there's other things that you can take off your plate, administrative, operational, absolutely, I think there are things that you can then bring in resources to help at that level.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk today. I have a question that, not sure how intricate it is, but what are the couple of markers that help you identify which stage, at the transition stage between different product market fits? Is it a line in the sand, or are you okay, now we've gone from 2 to 3, 3 to 4?
Yeah, I think with something like product market fit, to some extent it's just like a feeling, but I think it's more about the traction. So I think this, the best way I've found to really think about it is this framework from Mob around that case study and what is that user journey? Can you repeat it? And are you seeing traction within that? I don't think, how you measure product market fit, I don't think it's revenue. Revenue is an output. So I think if you think of, it'll depend on what is your product. So for example, for Uber, it might be the number of completed rides. What is your North Star metric? For someone like Canva, it might be the number of designs created. And it might be great to begin with, we're seeing 1 per day, but we want to get to 100 per day. How do we get that traction? What are the case studies going to get us there? So it's really figuring out for your startup, what is that North Star metric and at what velocity? You can pick a number, but I think it's more around the velocity and traction. It could be 1,000 a day, it could be 100 a day. But I think as you're sort of seeing that traction, that repeatability in whatever your metric is, and that metric I think should really be tied to what is the value that you're creating. For Airbnb, it's maybe number of booked house, host matches or completed bookings. Great, that's the value interaction between both sides of the marketplace, and that's the metric. For a boring B2B SaaS company, it might be, a number of invoices created and sent if you're an invoicing platform.
Hey, Harris.
Hey.
I'm Lucas. Thanks for this. This is great. You talked about Employment Hero and kind of you were hired to figure out a sort of enterprise B2B sales, and you figured it out. Actually, it's SMEs that's the fit there. Could you talk a bit about how did you kind of figure that out?
Yeah. I guess we figured out by me not being there anymore. Yeah, and I think like that was really tied to the growth motion. So, at the end of it, when we figured out, it was like, okay, like we actually don't need to invest in like an account management and a post-sales team. If we're working with small businesses, most of it should be self-serve. Maybe you build a scale customer success, customer support team to handle everything, but it really is about building more into the product. And I think the way we really learned that, again, it was just like the traction and effort, the amount of effort we were having to put in. And again, really looking at that, this sort of structure. We thought our ideal customers were enterprise, but their list of requirements, what they wanted, what they were using today. Yeah, they were using boring software like Oracle and SAP, SuccessFactors, Workday, but they're just so ingrained and they're just so highly, highly customizable, where it was sort of great. We can go down that route, but that's a very different sort of business model to here's this sort of out-of-the-box SaaS platform. But at the same time, we didn't only have enterprise customers, we had SMB customers as well. And so it was a lot easier to sort of see, great, here's this one set of customers, here's the other, where are we naturally seeing traction with, and where do we kind of, follow where the, follow the money, where the actual traction is going.
Makes really good sense. Thanks.
Hello, I had a question. So I'm an early stage founder and I would consider myself a 1.5 at that point. I think startups also could have this risk of pivoting unknowingly. I'm a solo founder, so it's even more. I wanted to know that when you're talking about early versus ideal customer personas, how do you avoid or how do you trade the risks of hyper customizing for an early one, especially in B2B enterprise? Because you might end up hyper customizing for an early one that the ideal one now is just like, that's something we wouldn't even need because you're just a smaller business and this is shit. So how do you do that?
Yeah, great question. I think a lot of it is just like you learn as you go and you sort of make those decisions. Like what is the platform? What is the company you want to be? There's a lot of successful businesses that are built on being extremely highly customizable, and we will do everything for everyone, but that's a very different business model. That is great. We're not an out-of-the-box SaaS tool, we're a platform. Salesforce is a good example. It's probably the worst CRM out of the box. Like, it sucks. But if you invest in it, you hire Salesforce developers, you can make it do whatever you want. And it's not really a CRM, it's a platform. It's amazing. That's very different to, here's HubSpot, we're a CRM, out of the box, this is what it does. Yep, here's some third-party tools, it integrates, this is our strategy. I think a good concept to think about is, like, what are your red routes? And I guess that term comes from, in London, they have red routes, which is what are like the most critical pathways in the roads in London that if there was a traffic jam here, like the city would just stop. So a good example in Sydney is, if there's an accident on the Harbour Bridge, like, the city is shut down. I think you like lose your license, you get a $100,000 fine. So what are sort of your red routes in your product that like must work? What is really important? And sort of during that sort of, level 1 to level 3 phase, there's just a lot of learnings and decisions that you have to make as a founder where maybe you are seeing more traction with a different customer base than you thought. And that's a very different business model and strategy to what you thought it was going to be. And there's a lot of stories of startups where, this is what it originally was and here's what it is now and it's unicorn and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of, just the hard calls that you have to make as a founder. But I think that's where like the importance of being close to your customers early on, being involved, not outsourcing the things that matter, is how you're able to get all that information. And, you're the most knowledgeable person about your company. You just have to make those hard calls.
I'll just say thank you on behalf of Qureshi. Hi, Harris. Thanks for sharing today. That was quite insightful, especially for us as new founders. If my understanding was correct, based on your slides, it seems like you put Hatch from both level 1 to level 2. So it sounds like you've done such a great job turning that company from level 1 to level 2. So can you just share with us only one business case that you've remembered the most, and that, from your opinion, that would be the deciding business case where made this change from level 1 to level 2? Would be really interested to know about that story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like at level 1, there's a bit of like, you just throw a lot of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You're experimenting a lot. Obviously, you need to have a good enough understanding of, what is like the commercial opportunity for each sort of different case study. So for us, from a Hatch perspective, great. Our ambition is we want to be able to help every single person in the world with any single type of job. But, we've got to do one sort of step at a time. So, learnings for us was, all right, if we're going to work on like technical roles, engineering, things like that, there's a lot more like technical specifications. That's a bit harder to do early on. Whereas, commercial roles where, sales, customer success, marketing, operations are a bit easier from a technology perspective. So again, understanding what are the strengths of your engineering product team, and like what are your capabilities, what can you do, what can't you do. There's a lot of tools off the shelf now that can do a lot of things for you, but again, you need to know how to use those tools. So yeah, for us, it was, we were just naturally seeing traction in commercial roles more so. And then it is really sort of taking a pause. All right, what would happen if that's what we really went hard after? What is the market opportunity in Australia for that? How many people are being hired in these general commercial roles? What would that look like if that's all we were to focus on? I guess for us, that's what we're focusing on. It's not to say that we're not doing anything else. So it's not exactly like having your cake and eat it too, but like where are you investing your time and energy? So it might be, again, in your example, great, we're going to focus on like customizable enterprise platform, make it really customizable, but people kind of like sign up and are happy to use it as is. Awesome, we'll sort of let that be, but that's not what you're investing your time and resources and sort of the growth of the company in.
Hi, I just have a question regarding how you define a business, if it's worth for you to keep investing all your resource, your time, your money, because as we know, it's like most of 99 out of the 100 business probably just failing the market. How you define that, if it's just the obstacle you have to overcome, or if it's a sign that you shouldn't invest, it might not be the right fit for you.
Yeah, again, I think a lot of it is like your conviction as a founder. Generally, what you're going to hear is people telling you no. Especially if you're great, you've built an MVP, you're trying to raise money. Most investors might say no because this company, they could just write a line of code and just do what you're doing. Why are we going to invest in you? Canva's the most notable example of, she got rejected, 99 times, and sort of, look at where they are today. So I think a lot of it is down to like your conviction and belief in what you're doing, I think ultimately at the end of the day. And then I think, there are definitely other like data points of like having a really good understanding of the market, where you're getting traction. I think, is it worth your time? I think a lot of that comes down to like your personal situation and circumstance. It might be, like, this is great, but I've got bills to pay, I've got a mortgage, like right now the time is better for me just to get a job and make a salary and maybe put this on the back burner and sort of do it on the weekends. Your situation might be, it's fine, I can afford to invest the next 12 months of my time and not make a salary and invest into this. I think a lot of it comes down to your personal circumstance, but also having a really deep understanding of the domain that you're in and the customer problem. Recruitment, from a Hatch perspective is like, there's a lot sort of broken in it. Anyone you speak to is always going to tell you recruitment's broken. It'll still be broken in 100 years. But, you know, for us, like, we have that conviction and we think we can build a better way. And so it's really sort of continuing to go down. But yeah, there are, you know, financial implications, personal considerations. You can raise a bunch of money, you can run out of money. Are people going to continue to give you money to build it? So I think it's just like, at some point, you know, are you getting enough traction? Yes or no. If you believe you can change it, great, go after it. But yeah, at some point you might sort of start to lose your conviction in what you're building. Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, feel free to grab me after. Happy to have a chat with anyone. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As he generously said, he's going to stick around. All the pizzas have arrived. We've separated them out. So we've got beautiful halal meat pizzas. We've got vegan. We've got vegetarian. Stay around, have a drink. This is the whole next valuable section. And come have a chat if you want to explore more ideas. Thanks so much.
Boy, you had me from the start. By the way you stared, the way you rolled up on me, yeah, yeah. And I felt your energy. 'Cause it used to be and I've been treated differently.